A Dark Peace by Dana Lee. Chapter 21. You have a fever, she said. After I finish with your arm, we'll have to get you in a cold tub. She washed his arm tenderly and spent hours picking out the grape shot. The hours had passed its minutes, and night had fallen. Faint moans came from the room next door, her brother's room. She wondered why Miss McBride hadn't come looking for her, and she realized she had written him off, a neglectful death. She said a silent prayer, "Please God, don't let him die," and he smiled at her when he should have been wincing. His smile was like nothing she had ever seen before. Sweet consideration. That's when she knew she loved him. He had known it when he first awoke and saw the painting of the girl who had stormed into his dreams. "Where's your father?" "He's burying the dead. He should have come home for supper. He's a fine man. This is a fine town, so green." "What's New Orleans like?" "It's different. There's no place like Nolens. I suppose you've been all over." "All over. I could stay here now, I think." She had finished bandaging his arm tightly. "I had better check on things downstairs. I'll be back to get you in the tub when the coast is clear. Miss McBride does not approve of you." "Is she your mammy?" "What?" "Oh, your chaperone?" "She's the housekeeper." She went downstairs and found the place was empty, besides the wounded soldiers. She found Miss McBride at the well drawing water. She appeared preoccupied and didn't seem to have missed her. "Father isn't back yet?" "No, he should be. I had better go looking for him." She finally looked at Lee. "No, you go look for him. You can't stay here all alone in the house while those men are here." "What could they possibly do to me?" "I have to stay. The one upstairs has a high fever. And it is so hot. He needs a cold bath." "You're not bathing him." "No, of course not. I'll just help him to the tub and leave him." "He'll leave his drawers on, of course." "I don't know." "For God's sakes. This is war. You seem to be forgetting that I've already witnessed their mangled bodies. You also forget that you are just the help. I'm 20 years old and I no longer have to listen to you." Miss McBride walked away from her, and Lee stood there, getting water and thinking about the strange rebel in her bed. She should have felt guilty, she knew, but she didn't. Instead, she felt strangely liberated with her happiness. She wondered if he was married, but couldn't ask. He assumed she wasn't. She brought dinner up to him on a tray, ham, potatoes, and lemonade. "You eat. I'll get you the tub and start hauling the water up." "Why are you being so good to me?" "I wish I could tell you." You can tell me anything. I won't squeal." "Your bath is ready. I need to check on the others. Good night." "Don't leave. Where will you sleep?" "I don't know. I suppose I should check with a friend of mine just across the way." "I shall not put a lady out of her bed, especially a sweet angel like you. I'm afraid the sheets need laundered." "Yes, that's true." Just then Michael came home. She could hear him downstairs. "Shh, my father is home." "You get in the tub." She took the sheets down with her. "Daddy." "Oh, me darling, are you all right?" "Yes, just tired is all." He looked a mess. His trousers were caked with mud. "Daddy, where will you sleep?" "I don't know. I know I should have turned some of them away, but I couldn't. Miss McBride is angry with me for it. Can you understand?" She hugged her father. "I love you, Daddy. Of course I understand. Would you like to go and check on the Olson house with me?" Mrs. Olson took a train to New York before the battle. When I left, Mary, the maid, was there alone. She wouldn't come with me. I took the horses, but after the battle they were gone. I guess somebody stole them from Mr. Deerhofer's barn while we were hiding in the basement. At any rate, we might be able to sleep there. Let's. Well, sit down for a minute at least first. You look terrible. I'll fix you a plate. I need to wash out these sheets too and hang them out to dry now that the rain has finally stopped. I met the man in my bedroom. I think he's just fine, Daddy, don't you? Lieutenant O'Neill. Yes, actually, I first saw him on the way to Jenny's before he was wounded. He had such a beautiful horse. The most beautiful horse I've ever seen. Such a shame. Such an ugly waste. Where is Fiona? Stolen too? No, I found her wandering around. I rode her home. She's in the stable. Good. My good lass. You aren't eating, Daddy. I'm not hungry. Chapter 22. Times might get a little lean around here for a while. The rebels stole the chickens and ate all of the cherries, picked those trees clean. They did leave the cow, a lucky surprise. Took the whiskey from the cellar too, most of it anyways. I do have some squirreled away in my hidey hole that they didn't find. I see another one died. Yes, is he still there on the porch? Lee was horrified. You think he got up and walked away? Honey, there are thousands upon thousands of unburied lads lying out there as I speak. If everybody in the town, every man, woman, and child did nothing else but bury bodies, it would take months before we were done. Luckily, the army is getting to it, but there will be a lot of boys without Christian burials, I'm afraid. It was late. She hung the sheets out to dry on the line. As the sheets swayed there in the night air, she imagined them to be the ghost of the handsome young boy on the porch. She hated leaving him there, alone in the dark. She went back up to Daniel and made the bed with fresh sheets. He looked even finer in the lamplight. His ruddy complexion turned to gold. Try to sleep, sir. I will be back in the morning to fix your breakfast. My father is home, and we are going over to check on the neighbor's house. We may sleep there. It depends what we find. I'm so very tired. Please, Lee, call me Danny. All of my friends do. All right, Danny. Oh, just one other thing before I go. If Miss McBride should offer you anything at all, even a glass of water, promise me you won't touch it. Damn, I was hoping for a good night kiss. They had left Miss McBride sleeping at the kitchen table wrapped in an old quilt. Lee thought she even looked mean while sleeping. The smell in the air was unbearable. They knocked at the Olsons' front door, and Edward answered. Oh, Edward, you're back. Come in, I'd offer you something, but I'm afraid Mary has gone to bed. Poor girl. Oh, so she's all right then. I was worried about her. She wouldn't vacate the house when we were told. I tried to spare your horses, sir. I was forced to the Derhofer farm, and by the time we came up from the basement, they were gone. I had tied them safely with provisions in the barn. It was a fine barn, too. Now it's a hospital like most every other place, it seems. I'm terribly sorry. He rubbed his balding head. Sit down. That's all right, honey. We've had enough worries, huh? Diana is staying in New York with her sister for a while, thank God. Don't you have any sick men here? Michael asked. Lee, honey, I hate to trouble you, but do you think you could go to the kitchen and fix us some tea? See, the thing of it is, I'd like to speak with your father alone. Of course. She went down the long hall, thinking how he treated her like a child he always had. Danny didn't see her as a child. She stopped and looked at herself in the hall mirror. There were only 2 mirrors at home, but the Olsons had one every time you turned the corner. To answer your question, no, Michael, but there's a dead rebel buried in my back garden with the vegetables. Seems he forced his way in before the battle had begun. He didn't hurt the girl, but she's an awful wreck. He took up post in the garret. He was firing at the army from the window as they came down the street. I hear he was up there shooting for 2 days straight, till Franklin Sadler across the street finally hit him mortally with his good Pennsylvania rifle. Mary was hiding in the cellar all this time. Franklin came over dodging bullets himself across the street and buried him out there under cover of the other houses. How am I supposed to tell my wife? Honey, there's a dead rebel in the garden. Don't eat the beets. Edward, don't tell her. Plant some shrubs. Move your garden space. How can I keep a secret like that? Surely the girl will tell somebody sooner or later. Later, Ed. Tell her only if and when you must. There's a dead boy on my porch. My house, my beds are crowded with wounded, dying men. I have a feeling that rebels will be found haunting our gardens for years to come. I'm sorry, my friend. Sleep here for as long as you like. You can bathe in the morning. You look exhausted. And he was. Lee slept in Mrs. Olson's beautiful room with its rich wallpaper like a garden of delight and high-posted bed draped in gossamered silks from far-off places. She dreamt of Daniel proposing to her in the shade of sycamore, making love to her. Never before had she dreamt such a thing. Sleeping late, she awoke to the smell of warm bread and death. I've got to get home. Jumping down from the bed, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the vanity mirror. The dark circles had vanished from beneath her eyes, and she was as fresh as a peach. It must have been those dreams, she thought, and smiled wistfully. Mrs. Olson had her own bathroom with a porcelain tub with clawed feet. All the McGraths had was a big wooden tub that they lugged around from room to room, which she was thankful for last night and was hoping that Danny's fever had broken. She looked at her brown dress draped across the back of the corner chair. It looked particularly drab in this setting. Her white one needed washed, and the blue one was probably ruined. She wondered if she could dye it red. Mary had been thoughtful enough to bring her some sudsy water. She washed and dabbed it herself with rose water she found on the vanity table. Mary could make the bed. Mrs. Olson obviously had taken her brushes along with her, so Lee raked through her tresses with her long fingers. She wished that she could fit into some of Mrs. Olson's diminutive dresses and satin slippers. Suddenly she felt like one of Cinderella's wicked stepsisters and went down to the kitchen. Mary was the only one there. There are some biscuits, butter, honey, and jam. She set a pot of tea in front of her, and Lee poured herself a cup. The porcelain was perfect and fine, with little rose garlands entwined around the edges. She swallowed the fragrant tea and asked, "Where's my father?" "They've left already, off to the cemetery, and to meet with the provost guard or someone, they said." "Oh, Mary, are you all right?" She only nodded her head. "Would you mind if I took my breakfast to go? There are nearly a dozen wounded men at my house, and only Miss McBride to look after them when I'm gone. Would you like me to come over and help in the kitchen?" "Oh, Mary, would you? That would be just wonderful." She shoved a biscuit in her mouth, and it was good. She was not as hungry as she should have been. Smearing the rest of the warm biscuits with gobs of butter and honey, she gathered them up in a cotton napkin. "I just can't eat with this awful smell in the air. It's enough to gag you." "I know," Mary agreed. Chapter 23. Lee was glad to see that the boy was gone from the front porch. She hoped he was in a better place. Walking around the rooms, Lee noticed that Jack was gone, so the parlor was clear. Of the 4 Jersey boys in the living room, 3 were left. One, James, was awake and talking. The dining room was also cleared of its haunting apparition. Lee could not wait to go upstairs and check on Danny, and rushed around looking for Miss McBride with Mary at her heels. They found her milking the cow. "Here you are. Did Daddy stop by this morning?" "No. Where is he?" "They slept at the house last night," Mary explained. "He's had his breakfast. Mr. Olson told me they were heading back to the cemetery and going to a meeting with the soldier in charge, a provost guard, I think they called him." "Yes, the guards rolled into town this morning with tents, ice, blankets, food, and other supplies. They are setting up shop the next street over. We can get what we need for the boys there in a day or 2. 4 of them did not make it till morning." Lee brought the milk pail in the kitchen and poured a glass. Racing up the stairs, she knocked softly at her own door. There was no answer, and she felt sick, her heart in her mouth. Daring to open the door a crack, she peeped in. There he was, thank God. She went in and went to lock the door behind her, only to notice the key was missing. Slowly she approached the bed. He looked like an angel lying there sleeping, and fearing the worst, she bent over and kissed him on the forehead. Opening his sleepy blue eyes, he smiled, and she blew a relieved sigh. "I reckon a good morning kiss to be even better than a good night one," he whispered, and she had gone all warm inside. Brushing the damp hair aside from his forehead, she smiled coyishly at him. He grasped and kissed her hand, each of her fingers, and said, "You taste like honey. I've brought you breakfast, so eat up. The biscuits are still warm, and the milk is as fresh as it can be." He gobbled, staring at her all the while. How marvelous his mouth is, she thought, and could still feel the tingle in her fingers. Putting her hand to her heart, she sat down next to the bed. "I was so worried about you. Miss McBride told me that 4 of the boys died last night. How is your arm?" She inspected the bandages that she had torn out of an old pillowcase, now blood-stained and yellowed with pus. "It's numb." "Do you think that's good?" "You're the doctor." "Oh, I'm no doctor." "You're better. A witch, then." "Yes, lady, I do believe you have bewitched me like Circe." "Oh, you read the Greeks." "I've been to Greece. I studied in Europe as a lad. I know a bit of Greek and Latin. I didn't do very well in Latin, I'm afraid. The grammar killed me. Of course, I speak French, too. My mother is French." "Oh, what's Europe like?" "I've only dreamed of seeing it." "Where have you been?" "I've been to London, Paris, Rome, and Athens. I spent 2 years there studying with a tutor. It is old and crowded." "What is your mother like?" "She is beautiful. I have a sister, too, an older sister, Marie. She has not found a husband suitable to Mama's rich taste yet, so she lives at home." "What about you?" "What about me?" "I noticed no ring on that pretty little finger of yours." "Oh, I'm not married." "Good. Neither am I. There are 2 kinds of girls back home, neither of them to my liking. I didn't know angels came from the north." "What kind of girls?" "There are ladies, like my mother, high society debutantes. Then there are the others, ladies of the evening, we call them, from the quarter." A scratching whine came to the door then. "Shiner!" She ran to let him in and found Miss McBride at the top of the stairs. Picking up the little dog, she kissed him. He needed a bath, covered in chiggers, and looked as if he had gotten into something nasty. "Where have you been? You shouldn't run off on your mummy like that. That's a bad boy." "What do you think you're doing?" Miss McBride hissed at her from underneath her breath. "I specifically told you to stay out of there until he was dead." "I needed my things." "There's nothing you need in there right now, so stay out. To think you've been wasting your time coddling a rebel while our boys are dying. It is reprehensible. What will people think?" "I don't care. I never did, and I especially never cared about what you were thinking in that wicked head of yours either. Give me back my key." "No, I'll take this up with your father later." "It's my room. This is my house." She went back in her room and slammed the door behind her. Well, page 86 seems to be missing. So, continue on with 87. "Many. I was raised by my mammy, who raised my mother as well. She passed away a few years ago, God rest her sweet dear soul. She was the finest woman I ever knew, till you, that is. And you are much better looking, too. There are lots of darkies here in town. I doubt they're here now. We saw a wagon train of them heading out as we rode in. Our orders were to round them up and take them with us. The army is pretty desperate for cooks and nurses." "Where's the army now, do you know?" "No, escaped. Is that what you'll do when you're better? Escape? Go and find the army?" "I'd rather stay here with you." She was silent. "I suppose we got licked here pretty bad, huh?" "My father says there are thousands dead, unimaginable horror. Thousands upon thousands. I'll get you a newspaper to read about it, all right?" "Thank you." "My brother was killed in Sharpsburg. His twin is somewhere in Virginia just now." "I'll pray for him. For you. You're such a darling. I'll be back. I've got to get a pan of hot water with salts to soak that arm in. Those bandages need changed. That's why these boys are dying of infection. That's how my brother died, although a nice lady from Virginia tried to save him. Now you see why I can't understand what Miss McBride is so upset about. While I'm out, I'll get the paper. I have some clothes to wash, too. I noticed yours." I would say the jacket is shot, but would you mind if I washed your shirt and pants for you? That is too much trouble. A lady like you should not be working like you do. You need somebody to take care of you. Yes, you're right, I do. But really, this is nonsense because I have to wash my own dresses anyways. So it is no bother at all. Besides, at the moment, I'd say you're the one that needs looking after. I'll mend your shirt too, the best I can. Hurry back, I'll miss you. It was a hot day and it smelled worse than it had yesterday. Lee hadn't noticed all of the damage to the houses in town, riddled with bullets, broken windows, and shells. She stopped when she reached the church with its pitiful choir screaming. There were limbs bloodied, terrible arms and legs piled high down the front steps. She stood paralyzed with horror, as if viewing some never-before-seen work in oils done in red, the art of war. Just then Miss Washington, her old schoolmarm, caught sight of her from across the street and scurried across to shake her. "Lee, come away from here." She held a handkerchief scented with roses and clove beneath Lee's nose and took her arm away from the church. "What are you doing out today?" "I need to get a newspaper and some dye. I was only going to the market." "Oh, the market is empty, looted by the rebels on the first day. They threw bricks at the front window and smashed it to bits. There are still a lot of them lurking about, stragglers, the worst kind, the ones their own army would shoot for desertion." "They shoot deserters?" "Of course they do. They have no conscience. Filthy creatures. They left their messes all along the roadside. Don't look. Beasts. They're foul. Don't breathe the air. It's pestilence. Did you hear? Jenny Wade was shot in the back through her kitchen door while baking bread." "No!" The Wades lived only a couple of houses down from the McGraths in a little brick house. "Yes, come on now. We'll go to the little shop on High Street. They'll have your paper and dye. Also pick up some oil to soak your handkerchiefs in, like this one. Something nice and pure. Orange, clove, lavender, or rose. The air will make you sick." "How is your well? They haven't polluted it, have they?" "What do you mean?" "They're throwing arms and legs in the wells. If they've done that to yours, I'm afraid you'll have to get your water elsewhere." "I think it's all right. We also get water from the spring." "Well, just to be on the safe side, boil all of your water before using it. If it smells bad, don't touch it." What a mess. This is the Lord's punishment upon them, gorging themselves to sickness. Now their blackened corpses lay rotting in the fields. Chapter 25. The newspaper was distressing. 50,000 casualties, 30,000 presumed dead. The death roster made up most of the paper. The Army of Northern Virginia was heading home. Lee thought his men were invincible. Daniel put down the paper and held Lee's hand. His arm seemed to be healing nicely, she thought, although still he had no feeling in it. "I've been thinking a lot over the past couple of days, thinking about God and fate, life and death. I think God has punished me taking my horse, who should be grazing in a green pasture right about now, smiting my arm that was made to hold you. You've delivered me from death, and I will repay you with my life. I believe you are my fate." He kissed her then, and she gave in to the passion. After all, it was her first real kiss. He liked that. She dyed her blue dress a royal purple, and his shirt, too. The stains would not come out. When she was finished with them, she thought they looked better than before. Michael was home, and she could hear him arguing with Miss McBride in the dining room, Irish whispers. She hated to eavesdrop. She was not a sneak, but after all, they were arguing about her. "She ought to be staying elsewhere until we get this house cleared out. This is her home. I like my girl with me, at least until she finds someone to love her back. I keep on telling you, woman, I want my girl happy. It's in her nature to be so. She is a happy, loving girl. So what if she likes the rebel? I rather like him myself. I told you he was trouble from the first I laid eyes on him. Now look, she spends all of her time with him, and those other poor boys are dead because of it." "Nonsense. She had as little to do with them dying as you or I did, and you know it. Mind your place. I'm not going to squabble about it with you any more. I'm feeling mighty poorly myself today. I think I'll go to bed early tonight. Me bones are achy." Well, your room is cleared, and so is mine now, for that matter. Did Pat die then today? Yes. He wrote a letter to his mother. You're a good woman no matter what they say about you, he snickered. She'll stay at the Olson house then until we get another bed? I suppose she'll have to. They had dinner at the Olsons. It wasn't anything fancy. Mrs. Olson had taken the silver with her to New York. Lee was particularly grateful. She couldn't imagine ever eating at their own dining room table ever again. Miss McBride had scoured it, laid out a fresh cloth, and thought she was being ridiculous. The picnic table made her equally ill. It smelled so bad outside, and her mouth always tasted of orange and clove. This was her first comfortable meal in days. Peanut soup and pickled melon. Daddy went to bed sick today. Would you mind if I took him some soup? Of course, do, Edward obliged. He's too old for the work he's been up to the last couple of days. So am I, for that matter, but who was ever really up to burying the dead, eh? He lit a cigar. Make sure he stays in bed tomorrow. I know I am. We do not have the luxury of staying in bed, Miss McBride said quietly, not without contempt. And I fed him before putting him to bed. What? Lee asked her. You do not have to be taking him any soup. Oh, there's plenty, Pete Mary. I made extra for the boys. I know you must be tired of feeding all of those mouths yourselves. Well, the good news about that is the government store opens tomorrow morning, and as long as you have sick boys among you, you can pick up all sorts of goods. Flour, potatoes, eggs, tea, even coffee and tobacco, Edward said. Glory be, Miss McBride exclaimed. These boys will eat you out of house and home. Oh, they don't eat that much, Lee came to their defense. Daniel ate his dinner gratefully. He hankered for some gumbo and a mint julep, but he wouldn't have traded the company for General Lee himself. He was learning to get around with his left hand, but he couldn't trim his whiskers, and this bothered him. He got out of bed and rooted around his haversack for his straight razor, silver cup, and goat hair brush. You need some help there, Johnny? He laughed. Who, me? Hand my razor over to a Yankee? You just want to trim? No, I'm thinking for a change, but leave the mustache. What do you think of a goatee? I don't know. I'll get a hot towel. She checked in on the others who were now sleeping. She thought how they were like babies, eating, sleeping, and crying. The house was quiet now. I see you've uncovered the mirror. I'm glad. She put the towel to his face. I'm afraid your shirt is purple now. I hope you don't mind much. Could not get the bloodstains out. I don't mind. I'll get you some of my brother's undershirts, too. Please don't. He'll be awfully mad. He's dead. Well, being twins and all, it must be very hard for him. He couldn't come home for the funeral. Why did you join this god-awful war to begin with? Freedom has a high cost. Besides, in the South, you really don't have much of a choice.